The violation notice appeared on my door at 6 in the morning, taped crooked and already half frozen to the frame. I work swing shift at the water treatment plant on the east side of Tucson, and I had exactly 90 minutes before I needed to leave for a 12-hour run monitoring chemical feeds and pressure sensors. My father had flown in 2 days earlier to recover from a hip replacement, and the stress of managing his meds and mobility on top of the plant schedule was already grinding me down. The notice said I had created a hazardous black ice condition on the sidewalk in front of my unit by improper snow removal, and the fine was $250, due immediately. The snow itself was a freak storm, the kind Tucson sees maybe once every 10 years, and it had dumped 4 inches overnight before turning into freezing rain. I had shoveled my walk at midnight right after my shift, salted it, and gone to bed. Now, Pamela Williams, president of the Brookhaven Greens Homeowners Association, was claiming I had caused the ice patch that sent her slipping near my front step. I looked up and saw her standing across the courtyard in that bright orange windbreaker she always wore over her coat when she did her morning patrols. She was watching me read the notice, arms crossed, waiting. I kept my hands open and my voice calm, because the real move was still ahead. I walked over, boots crunching through the snowbank, and asked her to show me the exact spot where she slipped. She pointed to a patch of sidewalk about 6 feet from my front step, where the concrete dipped slightly and held a thin sheet of ice. I took out my phone and snapped 3 photos, making sure the angle showed the dip and the distance from my property line. She saw me doing it and her face tightened. "If you push me," she said, "I can make this very expensive." I nodded, slid my phone back in my pocket, and told her I would be reviewing the HOA documents and getting back to her. She smiled, that tight professional smile she used in every board meeting, and said the board will back me no matter what. I walked back inside, checked on my father, made sure his morning pill organizer was set, and then pulled up the Brookhaven Greens governing documents on my laptop. The snow removal clause was buried in the winter addendum, added 3 years ago after another rare storm, and it was vague as hell. It said homeowners were responsible for clearing walks adjacent to their units within 12 hours of snowfall ending, but it did not define adjacent, did not specify salt requirements, and did not address shared common walkways. The patch where Pamela claimed she slipped was technically common property, maintained by the HOA landscaping contractor. I screenshotted the clause, saved it, and sent a polite email to the management company asking for clarification and requesting copies of any incident reports filed about the ice. The management company did not respond that day. I went to work, ran my shift, came home at 2 in the morning, and found my gate access code had been deactivated. I sat in my car at the keypad for 15 minutes in the freezing cold, calling the after-hours maintenance line, which rang and rang. Finally, a security guard I knew, Marcus, pulled up in his patrol cart and manually opened the gate for me. He said Pamela had called the management office that afternoon and requested my code be suspended pending resolution of a safety violation. He told me off the record that she had been doing this to 3 other homeowners on my street over the past month, always finding some small rule to weaponize, always pushing until people either paid or moved. Marcus said he was tired of her calling him at all hours demanding he enforce violations that were not even his job. He gave me his cell number and said to text him if I got locked out again. I parked, checked on my father, who was asleep, and then sat at the kitchen table going through the HOA violation history I had requested weeks earlier for an unrelated issue. The management company had sent me a partial records dump before Pamela took over as president, and I had never deleted it. I opened the file and started reading. Within 20 minutes, I found a pattern. Every homeowner on Cypress Lane, my street, had received at least 2 violations in the past 6 months. Every homeowner on Maple Court, 1 street over, had received 0. I pulled up property sale records on the county assessor site and cross-referenced. 4 homes on Cypress Lane had sold in the past 8 months, all below market value, all to the same LLC. I looked up the LLC registration. The registered agent was a property management company that shared an address with a real estate investor group Pamela's husband worked for. I screenshotted everything, backed it up to 3 different cloud accounts, and then emailed my attorney. I used a local guy, someone who handled my mother's estate planning and knew his way around HOA law. He responded the next morning and said the selective enforcement pattern could be grounds for a complaint, but I needed something concrete linking Pamela's actions to the LLC purchases. He also told me to document every interaction, keep all emails, and if possible get her on camera making a threat. I started carrying my phone in my chest pocket with the camera app ready. The second notice came 3 days later. This one said I had failed to respond to the first violation, and the fine was now doubled to $500, plus a $50 administrative fee for non-compliance. The notice was dated 2 days earlier, meaning it claimed I had received the first notice 4 days ago instead of 3. I checked my doorbell camera footage. The first notice had been taped to my door at 6:14 in the morning on the 9th. The second notice claimed the first was delivered on the 8th. I saved the footage, clipped the timestamp, and sent it to my attorney with a note that said fabricated dates, evidence attached. He replied within an hour and told me to request a hearing with the board and to bring the footage. I requested the hearing in writing, sent it certified mail, and copied the management company. The response came from Pamela directly, not the management company. She said I could have a hearing, but I would need to pay a $100 document retrieval fee to get copies of the incident report and the violation history I was disputing. I replied and said the governing documents guaranteed homeowners access to HOA records without fees except reasonable copying costs, and I was requesting digital copies, which cost nothing. She replied again and said the fee was for staff time to locate and compile the records, and it was non-negotiable. My attorney said that was illegal under Arizona HOA law, and I should file a complaint with the state, but that would take months. He suggested I show up to the hearing without paying and force them to either provide the records or proceed without evidence. The hearing was scheduled for the 15th, 6 days away. In the meantime, the city issued a snow emergency parking ban starting at midnight on the 13th because another storm was forecast. The ban meant all street parking was prohibited to allow plows through, and any car left on the street after midnight would be towed. I had a assigned carport space, so I was fine, but I noticed Pamela had started calling a towing company and walking the streets with a clipboard that afternoon, hours before the ban took effect. Marcus texted me and said she had already tagged 4 cars with warning stickers, even though the ban did not start until midnight. I walked outside and saw her standing near the mailbox cluster on Cypress Lane, talking on her phone, pointing at a sedan parked on the curb. I took out my phone and started recording. She saw me, ended her call, and walked over. "You are not allowed to record me without consent," she said. I kept the camera rolling and told her we were on HOA common property, and Arizona is a one-party consent state. She stepped closer, her face red, the orange windbreaker bright even in the gray afternoon light. "If you push me," she said again, "I can make this very expensive." I asked her if she was calling tow trucks before the parking ban started. She said she was coordinating with the towing company as a courtesy to residents. I asked her if she had called tow trucks for any cars on Maple Court. She did not answer. I asked her again. She turned and walked away, pulling out her phone. That night I checked the footage from my doorbell camera and saw a tow truck pull onto Cypress Lane at 11:45, 15 minutes before the ban started. It hooked a car and pulled it out at 11:52. The city parking ban enforcement did not start until midnight. I saved the footage and sent it to Marcus, who confirmed that Pamela had given the towing company a list earlier that evening. He also told me the management company had started getting complaints from other homeowners about selective towing, but Pamela kept saying it was a safety issue, and the board backed her. The snowstorm hit that night, another 3 inches, and by morning the streets were a mess. I shoveled my walk again, salted it, took time-stamped photos, and then went to work. When I got home, there was a third notice on my door. This one said I had blocked the common sidewalk with excessive salt application, creating a slip hazard and damaging HOA landscaping. The fine was $300. I pulled up my photos from that morning. I had used maybe 2 cups of rock salt, spread thin, nowhere near excessive. I checked the doorbell footage. Pamela had walked past my unit at 7 in the morning, stopped, looked at the salt, and then made a phone call. 10 minutes later, a man I did not recognize walked up, took photos of the sidewalk, and left. I saved all of it. My father asked me that night if I was okay. He said I looked like I was carrying something heavy. I told him about the notices, the fees, the gate lockout, the towing. He said it sounded like someone was trying to force me out, and he asked if I had thought about just paying the fines and moving. I told him I had thought about it, but if I left, she would just do it to the next person, and the next, until she and her husband's investor group owned half the street. He nodded and said, "Then you have to fight it. But be smart." I told him I was working on it. The day before the hearing, I got an email from the management company regional supervisor, a woman named Angela I had never dealt with before. She said she had reviewed my complaint about document fees and selective enforcement, and she wanted to meet with me privately before the board hearing. I called my attorney. He said it was unusual but not a red flag, and I should go but record everything. I met Angela at a coffee shop off-site, and she brought a folder. She laid out printed emails showing that Pamela had been requesting violation notices be sent to specific addresses on Cypress Lane, while ignoring identical issues on other streets. She also showed me an internal memo where Pamela had pressured the management company to raise the document retrieval fee to discourage records requests. Angela said the company was worried about liability, and she wanted to know if I had any other evidence of misconduct. I told her about the towing footage, the fabricated dates, the gate lockout, and the LLC property purchases. She took notes, asked for copies of everything, and then told me something I had not expected. She said the HOA's liability insurance carrier had sent a notice 2 months ago warning that the policy was at risk of non-renewal due to an unusual number of harassment and retaliation claims. The carrier had required the board to take a compliance training course, but Pamela had refused to schedule it, saying the claims were frivolous. Angela said if I could document that Pamela was deliberately targeting homeowners, the insurance issue could force the board to act. I gave Angela digital copies of everything that night. She said she would forward it to the insurance carrier and the management company's legal team, and she would be at the board hearing as an observer. I asked her if Pamela knew she was coming. She said no. The hearing was set for 7 in the evening at the clubhouse, a small one-room building next to the community pool. I arrived early with my father, who insisted on coming despite his hip. Marcus was there, off duty, sitting in the back. 3 other homeowners showed up, all from Cypress Lane, all holding violation notices. The board filed in, Pamela, the vice president, the treasurer, and 2 at-large members. Angela walked in last and sat in the back corner with a notepad. Pamela saw her and her face went tight, but she did not say anything. Pamela opened the meeting and said we would be addressing multiple violations tonight, starting with mine. She read the 3 notices aloud, adding commentary about how irresponsible snow removal endangered the community and how my refusal to pay fines showed a lack of respect for the governing documents. I waited until she finished, then asked if I could present evidence. She said I could, but I had not paid the document retrieval fee, so the board did not have the incident reports to compare against. I said that was fine. I brought my own records. I pulled out a binder I had put together that afternoon. It had printed doorbell camera screenshots with timestamps, weather reports showing snowfall times, photos of the ice patch with measurements showing it was on common property, the email chain from the management company confirming the fabricated dates, the county property records showing the LLC purchases, and the violation history showing the selective enforcement pattern. I walked the board through it, page by page. Pamela interrupted twice, saying the evidence was irrelevant and I was wasting time. I ignored her and kept going. When I got to the LLC property purchases, one of the at-large board members, a retired teacher named Dorothy, asked Pamela directly if her husband was affiliated with the investor group. Pamela said it was none of the board's business. Dorothy said it absolutely was the board's business if there was a conflict of interest. The vice president asked to see the county records. I handed them over. Pamela stood up and said the meeting was out of order and she was calling a recess. Angela stood up in the back and said she was representing the management company tonight and she recommended the board continue the hearing and address the evidence on the record. Pamela sat down, her face red, the orange windbreaker practically glowing under the fluorescent lights. I continued. I pulled out the final piece, the one I had been holding. It was a printed copy of the insurance carrier's notice about the policy being at risk. Angela had sent it to me that afternoon with a note saying it was public record once submitted to the board. The notice specifically cited harassment complaints and required the board to take corrective action or risk non-renewal. I read it aloud, slowly, and then asked Pamela when the board had scheduled the required compliance training. She did not answer. Dorothy asked Angela if the insurance issue was accurate. Angela confirmed it. The treasurer, a quiet guy who rarely spoke, asked Angela if the management company had recommended any action. Angela said the company had recommended Pamela step down from enforcement duties pending an independent review, but Pamela had refused. The vice president asked Pamela if that was true. Pamela said the management company was overstepping and the board had full authority under the governing documents. I asked if I could make one more point. Dorothy said yes. I pulled out the towing footage, queued it up on my phone, and played it on the TV mounted on the wall. The timestamp showed 11:45, the tow truck hooking the car, pulling it out at 11:52, 8 minutes before the parking ban started. I paused it and asked Pamela if she had authorized early towing. She said the towing company made an error. I played the second clip, showing her on the phone earlier that evening, pointing at cars, holding the clipboard. She said that did not prove anything. Marcus stood up in the back and said he had the dispatch logs from the towing company showing Pamela called at 10:30 and provided a list of addresses all on Cypress Lane. He said he had filed a complaint with the management company about it. Pamela turned and told him he was out of line. He said he was off duty and speaking as a homeowner. She said he did not live in Brookhaven Greens. He said his sister did, and she was one of the people Pamela had been targeting. The room went silent. Dorothy asked for a motion to remove Pamela from all enforcement and compliance duties pending a full board review. The vice president seconded. The vote was 4-1, Pamela voting no. Dorothy then moved to rescind all violation fines issued to Cypress Lane homeowners in the past 6 months pending independent review. That passed 4-1 as well. Pamela stood, said the board was making a huge mistake, and walked out. The orange windbreaker disappeared into the parking lot. Angela stayed after and talked to the board for another 20 minutes. She said the management company would be conducting an audit of all violation notices and enforcement actions under Pamela's tenure, and the results would be shared with the homeowners and the insurance carrier. She also said the company was recommending the board hire an independent HOA management consultant to review governance procedures. Dorothy thanked her and said they would discuss it at the next meeting. I walked out with my father and Marcus. My father said that was the most satisfying thing he had seen in years. Marcus said Pamela would probably resign within a week. I said I hoped so, but I was not counting on it. 2 days later, Pamela sent an email to the entire community saying the board had overstepped its authority and she would be seeking legal counsel. She copied the management company, Angela, and the insurance carrier. Angela replied all and said the management company stood by its recommendation and would be terminating its contract with Brookhaven Greens if the board did not take corrective action. The insurance carrier sent a separate email saying the policy would not renew unless the board completed compliance training and removed Pamela from all decision-making roles related to enforcement. The board held an emergency meeting 3 days later. Pamela did not attend. Dorothy was elected acting president. The board voted to accept Pamela's resignation, which she had submitted by email that morning. They also voted to hire the independent consultant and to refund all fines collected from Cypress Lane homeowners in the past year. The total refund was over $18,000 across 9 households. The independent consultant's report came out 6 weeks later. It found that Pamela had systematically targeted homeowners on Cypress Lane with selective enforcement, fabricated violation dates, and improper fee assessments. It also found that the LLC purchases were coordinated with her husband's investor group, and that Pamela had used her HOA position to pressure homeowners into selling below market value. The report recommended the board refer the findings to the Arizona Attorney General's office for investigation of potential HOA fraud. The board voted to do so. The Attorney General opened an investigation in March. Pamela and her husband were interviewed. The investor group dissolved the LLC and sold the 4 properties back to individual buyers. Pamela was barred from serving on any HOA board in Arizona for 5 years. The management company settled with the 9 Cypress Lane homeowners for an additional $12,000 to cover legal fees and stress damages. I stayed in my townhome. My father went home after his hip healed, but he called every week to ask how things were going. I told him Brookhaven Greens was quieter now, that Dorothy had implemented a transparent violation process with mandatory photographic evidence and homeowner response periods, and that the new management company was responsive and professional. He said he was proud of me for standing up. I said I just got tired of being pushed. Marcus stayed on as head of security. He told me later that Pamela had tried to get him fired twice during her tenure, once for refusing to enforce a parking violation she made up, and once for letting me through the gate the night my access was cut. He said he was glad she was gone. The snow melted by mid-February. Tucson went back to being Tucson, dry and bright and warm. The Cypress Lane homeowners started a monthly coffee meetup to discuss HOA issues before they escalated. I went to the first one. We talked about landscaping rules and mail delivery and whether the pool needed resurfacing. It was boring and normal and exactly what an HOA should be. I kept the binder. I kept the doorbell footage. I kept every email, every notice, every receipt. I backed it all up and filed it in a folder labeled insurance, because that is what it was. Insurance against the next time someone decided to push. The Brookhaven Greens Board issued a formal censure of Pamela in April, voted unanimously, and entered it into the permanent meeting minutes. The censure included a detailed summary of the violations, the fabricated dates, the selective enforcement, and the conflict of interest. It was public record. Dorothy made sure of that. I ran into Pamela once, months later, at a grocery store on the east side. She was in line ahead of me. She saw me, her face went tight, and she moved to a different checkout lane. I paid for my groceries and left. I did not say anything. There was nothing left to say. The spring brought new neighbors to Cypress Lane. A young couple bought one of the homes the LLC had sold, and they asked me about the HOA within a week of moving in. I told them the short version: read the governing documents, keep records, do not be afraid to ask questions, and if something feels wrong, it probably is. They thanked me and said they had heard stories about HOA horror shows but hoped Brookhaven Greens was different now. I said it was, mostly. But stay alert. The water treatment plant promoted me to senior operator in May. The raise helped. I had burned through most of my savings on attorney fees, even with the settlement, and the promotion put me back on stable ground. My father sent a card congratulating me and included a note that said sometimes standing up costs you in the short term but pays off in the long term. He was right. Dorothy served as president for 2 years and then stepped down, saying she had done what she came to do. The board elected a younger homeowner, a software engineer who ran on a platform of digital transparency and streamlined processes. He implemented an online portal for violation reporting and appeals, and he required all board meetings to be recorded and posted within 48 hours. It worked. Complaints dropped. Attendance at meetings went up. People started trusting the process again. I still see the orange windbreaker sometimes in my head when I am shoveling snow or checking my mail or dealing with any minor hassle. It is a reminder that some people will use every bit of power they get, and the only defense is documentation, patience, and the willingness to fight back when it matters. I kept my hands open and my voice calm, and it worked, but it could have gone the other way. I know that. The HOA insurance carrier renewed the policy in June with a lower premium, citing improved governance and reduced liability risk. Angela told me later that the carrier used Brookhaven Greens as a case study in their training materials for how proper oversight and transparency can turn around a high-risk community. I thought that was funny, in a dark way. We had become the example of what not to let happen. Marcus retired from security work in the fall and moved to Flagstaff. Before he left, he stopped by and gave me a bottle of whiskey and a handshake. He said working at Brookhaven Greens had been the most frustrating job he ever had, but watching Pamela go down made it worth it. I thanked him for backing me up when it mattered. He said that is what decent people do. The last time I saw the patch of black ice was in a photo I printed and framed. It hangs in my home office, next to my operator certifications and my father's old Navy plaque. It is a reminder that small things can escalate fast, and the difference between losing and winning is often just keeping better records than the other side. The board never did find out exactly how much money Pamela and her husband made off the Cypress Lane properties. The LLC dissolved before the Attorney General could freeze the assets, and the investor group claimed the sales were legitimate market transactions. My attorney said we could pursue a civil suit, but it would cost more than we would recover. I let it go. Pamela was out, the board was fixed, and the neighborhood was stable. That was enough. I still live in Brookhaven Greens. I still shovel my walk when it snows. I still salt it, take photos, and keep the timestamps. I probably always will. Some habits you keep because they saved you once, and you never know when you will need them again.